So what we have here is our newest topiary, Figment. We originally were doing him for Flower and Garden, but during the planning of the new Festival of the Arts, it became apparent that Figment was going to play a big role in that festival. And the question was asked, do you think you can get Figment done in time? And of course, being good partners, we says yes we can, so we got him done. I will say though, the bed's going to get significantly blinged out more for Flower and Garden Festival. We couldn't give everything away. And this is really a topiary we did based on guest. You know, in horticulture sometimes you can be a little isolated from what people are buying, what they like, but we kept hearing from the merchandise folks that our guests just love Figment. We're like, well, we hadn't had a Figment topiary probably since '92 maybe. So we asked, you think it'd be popular? Of course they were like, yeah, of course it would be popular. So we got him done. And of course, like always, we worked with our friends at WDI to make sure he's much more accurate. If any of y'all go back and look at the, I'm sure you can find the pictures of our old Figment versus the new one. It's really night and day. And again, that's actually two different pieces. He's on the ball is a separate piece. We come in here to set him on it the night we installed it. The really interesting thing is, just like your irrigation system, as we were lowering it, you had to connect all the different irrigation tubes because he's fully irrigated, as are almost all of our topiaries. And he'll be here till 1st of June. Do our face characters. We're actually working with our character artists to make sure that our topiaries look like the character, and I think they've done a great job on Belle. Of course, she's now our fourth one we've done this to, the first being Snow White, of course Anna and Elsa, and now Belle. So that tells you you won't be seeing you won't be seeing Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty until if and when we get their faces done. We just took this to a new place, and the thing I always like to tell people about this really is an individual piece of Disney artwork. I think when people see our topiaries, they think in the old days when it was just, you know, kind of plants, kind of sculpted to look like the topiaries. This is not that. We work with the same character artists who did the artwork for your t-shirts or the sculpts. The exact same people work with us on our topiaries. Not only the face parts, but the figures and everything as well. So that truly is work of art created by Disney artists, one of a kind. And hopefully we'll be around for a long, long time. Do you have any questions?
Why don't you explain a little bit about the process?
Okay. So really, this is two different types of artistic media. Of course, the plants here, and also you got to think when we're doing our topiary frames. If you were to see her unplanted, she'd look really weird because her dress would be way too small. When we're making this, we know ahead of time that you're going to have 3 to 4 inch plant material on that dress. So you have to kind of make it truncated, where her torso, that's less than an inch of plant material, so you make it about the actual size. What you're doing for the actual body, the skin, the hair, this is actually a sculpt. A Disney sculptor has created a sculpt that fits perfectly with our frame, and of course you can imagine it's not just taking a picture, they're out here working continually. And then of course we do the art on it to make it look botanical, and then you have to have a way to attach the sculpted artwork to the growing artwork. I've got to say, we first did this with Snow White 3 years ago, or 3 years ago. We truly did not know if it was going to work. Even the artist said, we're not sure this can be successful. It's one of those things you actually have to try it. Well, we tried it, and of course it worked. So now we're in the process of making all of our face characters look like this. Really is fun because, you know, we've been working for so long to bring our topiaries to life, and I think this finally is the highlight of what we'll get. I can't say that we'll ever get a more lifelike topiary than you have right here. And of course, from the feedback, we know our guests love it. So, anyway, that's how it's done. Yeah, the irrigation's like in Figment. You can't see it. I'm not going to tear up their set to show it to you. But as we started getting more and more topiaries in the festival, it became a challenge because it takes a long time to water a topiary. Of course, you don't water this, but pretend like this is plants. You water an extremity, you just can't hit it once and leave. You got to keep coming back again and again. So it takes a long time to water one. When we were going from 20 topiaries to 80, we knew we didn't have the staffing to do nothing but water. So our team back at the nursery just found a way, basically, to do in topiary what's done in your yard. If you have a house with an irrigation system, you have different zones, and each of those zones will have a different type of spray head depending on how much water that area needs. It's the same in these topiaries. We have lots of different tubings going to different zones, and an area, an extremity that dries out will have a whole lot more water being put out than, say, in a big fat area that doesn't need as much watering. We've been working on that system. We started doing that probably 15 years ago, and we've gotten better and better at it. It really is what has allowed us to have so many topiaries at the festival. Otherwise, we just wouldn't be able to maintain them. And it does, quite frankly, it does a lot better job than hand watering. Because hand watering, you know, the gardener's having a bad day, they're thinking about going home, they call in sick, and you just don't have the time. I used to, you'll hear, when the first festival, during the first Flower and Garden Festival, I was foreman on the topiary team. It's very, very difficult to hand water a topiary correctly. It takes a lot of skill and a lot of time. And back then we were only doing 15 to 20, and it seemed like it took a lot of time. I can't imagine having to hand water 75 topiaries. Well, of course, now we don't have to. It's automated.
Is there anything else technology-wise that has changed, like the irrigation?
Yeah, sure. When we first started doing this, and you know, it's not really a topiary talk because I don't have one half built, but this is sphagnum moss that's held in by a plastic mesh. We used to use chicken wire, and it took forever to stretch that chicken wire. And if you've ever worked with chicken wire, you know it's a slow process. One of our gardeners was going out to cover our shrubs and out at the nursery in the holding area to keep the deer from eating them. And he used a little net with a mesh about this big, little plastic, and he just stopped and said, I bet this would work for chicken wire. Brought it back in. Not only did it work, it goes on 5 times faster. It's a lot cheaper. It's just a better product. You know, someone just said, So the product we use on this is actually deer netting to keep deer off plants. Finally, the sphagnum moss. We used to use sphagnum moss from either Florida or Canada, which was harvested from bogs. Now we get it from New Zealand, where they actually harvest it and then replant it, so it's a lot more sustainable. And finally, many of y'all might have seen this before. We're one of the world's, boy, those are good. Sorry, girl. We're one of the world's largest users of French hairpins. There's hundreds and hundreds of plants on this topiary, and this is what we use to hold them in and hold them on. So literally, I would guess there's probably 1,000 to 1,500 hairpins in her. I mean, you saw how quickly I found one. There's one, there's one. They're just all over the place in there. And fortunately, she hadn't been planted long. I actually have to fix her because I pulled a little vine loose there. The team's going to kill me.
Hey, Eric, we have a number of food writers here today, as well as the general writers, and I wondered if you would talk a little bit about how you told me the guests often ask more about how they can grow their own plants and produce and that sort of thing.
You know, the food coming into Flower and Garden Festival really was what we'd noticed 10 or 12 years ago, that if we wanted to double or triple the attendance in a garden, all we had to do was change it from just an ornamental landscape to an edible landscape. And the first one we did this in was a garden that was near Canada at the time, where the DVC hut is now. And we had used the same garden one year. The next year, the only thing we did different was add edible landscape. We tripled, almost quadrupled the attendance in the garden. So we knew that there was a lot of demand for edible landscape. So even before you started seeing actual food being served in Flower and Garden, you started seeing a whole lot of extra plants or edible landscapes being shown. Now what we found since we've added food is we've changed our demographic in a way that we think this is all what we see in the festival center talking to our guests. 10 years ago I would very seldom have someone in their 20s ask me how to grow plants. Now it's very common to have someone in their teens, 20s, and 30s wanting to know how they can grow plants. But they're not asking about marigolds and petunias. They're wanting to know, they said, I was in the Urban Farm Eats garden, I saw that you're growing cabbage, can I do that in my house in a container like you are? Well, yes, you can. So we in horticulture think it's, you know, if there's a way to get the young people gardening, and I think there is, it's going to be through edible plants. And this is not just Disney scene, this is the trend in the horticulture field. You know, now you have nurseries that are having cooks demonstration in their nurseries while they have all the herbs and vegetables ready to sell. So we're just playing on a trend I say trend, it's not a trend, it's a change. Because everyone's like, well, how long is this trend going to last? And I just can't see people going back, you know, I'm tired of eating all this good, healthy food. I'm just starting eating bad stuff again. It's not going to happen. So what we're actually seeing, in my opinion, is a change. And we see it directly when we're talking to our guests at the Flower and Garden Festival. For so long, I think when people thought Flower and Garden Festival, they only thought flowers. Well, if I tell you I have a garden at my house, you're not thinking flowers. You know, if you hear someone, yeah, a garden, you're usually thinking vegetables. So vegetables and herbs can be as much of a garden. And one of the things we do, and you'll see it a lot during Flower and Garden, you see it a lot of our houses, is this container an edible container or a decorative? Well, if I have a cabbage with 2 petunias in it, I'd say it's both. So we're starting to see the lines blur between an edible landscape and an ornamental landscape, and you actually see that in laws that are being passed in different cities that allow you now to grow edible plants in the front yard as well as the back. It used to be if you started planting some kind of vegetable garden in your front yard, the next thing you know the city might be sending you letters. More and more cities are actually allowing that. Just like they're allowing chickens too, you know. So I think that's a trend that we see. That's a change that we see, and we certainly have seen it add a lot of popularity to the Flower and Garden Festival. And, you know, it's one of those things you can do something that you actually believe in. Most of us in horticulture because we like horticulture, we like to garden. So it's fun to see, to get to do stuff in the park and see your guests learning things that we have a passion for. And really most of the gardeners that you talk to, you'll notice, do have a passion for horticulture. Obviously not everyone, but most of the people I work with do. Anything else? Let's cover the food. I think you've got a quick rundown of where we're heading in Flower and Garden Festival. You're going to see more topiary, they're going to be more realistic, and you're going to see more and more edible landscapes. I will, one point I do want to make, because I get this question occasionally. As we've added the edible landscapes, there's been no reduction of our ornamental landscape. It's truly been an addition of content in the festival. So as you walk around now, especially if you've been coming for years, look at the little areas. There's some in Italy, several in Future World, the Pepper Garden by Mexico, where 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago we just had regular landscape. And we've come in and we found, we're trying to really identify every area that we can add a special garden for Flower and Garden to make the park even more decorated, tell a better story even for Flower and Garden. I think we're getting there. You know, we'll never be where we want to be, right? But you always try to get closer. And thank y'all for coming, by the way. You know, this is a great time of event for horticulture. You know, normally we're in the background, right? Our job is to make the park look pretty so the guests enjoy all the other stuff. This is the one time of year that we in horticulture, you know, we're the show. People come to see us. And especially for those that have been here a long time, I've got 30 years this May, which in horticulture is not really a long time, but for a lot of people that's a long time with one company. For those of us who remembered when we were today, we were just the background folks. We came in early, we left, made the park look pretty so the guests could enjoy the attractions. And it really was a sea change for us when, you know, people really want to come see what we do. And I think that's added a lot of morale to our department over the last 24 years, if you can believe it. So.